There is a moment in every conversation when power quietly shifts. It happens when one person stops rushing to speak, when the room goes still for just a second longer than expected, when words are chosen, not spilled. In that moment, something changes. People lean in, attention sharpens, and suddenly, the voice that speaks less begins to carry more weight. This audiobook begins with a simple truth that is often ignored. Powerful communication has very little to do with how much you say. It has everything to do with the state you are in when you speak. Think about the individuals whose words you remember long after the conversation ends. They are not the ones who talked the most. They are not the ones who explained everything in detail. They are the ones who spoke with calm, with clarity, or with an unspoken confidence that made their silence just as meaningful as their words. There is a reason for this. Human beings do not respond first to language. They respond to emotional signals, to tone, to pacing, to presence. Before the brain processes meaning, it senses stability or tension, certainty or hesitation, control or reactivity. And no amount of clever wording can compensate for an unstable inner state. Many conversations fail, not because the message is wrong, but because the energy behind the message feels rushed, defensive, or uncertain. Words spoken from anxiety feel light. Words spoken from calm feel grounded. This is why people who talk less often hold more influence. Their words arrive without pressure, without urgency, without the need to convince. They do not push meaning onto others. They allow meaning to land. This audiobook is not about becoming louder. It is not about winning arguments or overpowering others with logic. It is about learning how to regulate yourself before you speak, how to slow down your internal tempo, how to let silence work for you instead of against you. Calm is not passivity. Calm is not weakness. Calm is control. When you are calm, you do not chase reactions. You do not rush to fill gaps. You do not feel threatened by pauses. You speak when there is something worth saying, and because of that, people listen when you do. Throughout this audiobook, you will learn why silence creates authority, why slower speech signals confidence, why fewer words often communicate more. You will begin to notice how people respond differently when you stop explaining, stop justifying, and stop trying to be understood at all costs. This is not about manipulation. It is about alignment. When your internal state is steady, your communication becomes clear. When your presence is grounded, your words gain weight. By the end of this audiobook, you will not speak more skillfully. You will speak more deliberately. You will understand when to speak, when to pause, and when silence itself communicates strength. Because the goal is not to dominate conversations. The goal is to carry presence. Say less, be heard more. Chapter 1. Why loud voices lose power. There is a reason loud voices rarely command lasting respect. At first, they may grab attention. They may dominate the room. They may even silence others for a moment. But attention is not the same as authority. Authority does not come from volume. It comes from stability. When someone raises their voice, speaks too fast, or fills every gap with words, the listener's nervous system detects something immediately. Not consciously, instinctively. The signal is subtle, but powerful. It suggests tension rather than control. The human brain is always scanning for emotional cues. Before it evaluates logic, it evaluates state. Is this person grounded, or are they reacting? A loud voice often feels like a reaction, even when the message itself is reasonable. Urgency leaks through tone. Pressure leaks through speed. Neediness leaks through excess explanation. Once these signals appear, trust quietly weakens. This is why people who speak the most are often interrupted. Why do they repeat themselves? Why do they leave conversations feeling unheard despite having said everything they could? They confuse noise with impact, but noise does not create weight. It creates friction. Think about moments when you felt the urge to speak louder, to clarify again, to push your point just a little harder. In those moments, were you calm, or were you trying to regain control? Raising your voice is rarely about confidence. It is usually about urgency, and urgency communicates weakness far more clearly than silence ever could. Powerful communicators understand something most people miss. They do not try to control the room with force. They regulate it with presence. Presence slows the emotional tempo. Presence steadies the atmosphere. Presence signals that there is no rush. When there is no rush, people listen differently. A loud voice tries to occupy space. A calm voice allows space to form around it. That difference changes everything. Calm speech arrives without pressure. There is no sense of being pushed toward agreement. No emotional demand hidden between the words. This makes the listener feel safe enough to stay engaged. And attention is the gateway to influence. The irony is that the quieter voice often carries farther. Not in volume, but in effect. It lingers. It shapes decisions after the conversation ends. Loud communication often seeks immediate results. Approval, validation, a visible reaction. Calm communication is patient. It understands that real authority does not need to rush. Patience signals certainty. People instinctively respect those who are comfortable waiting, those who do not panic when silence appears, those who do not fill space just to feel present. Waiting suggests confidence. Another reason loud voices lose power is that they reveal emotional dependency. They show a need for agreement, a need for recognition, a need to be acknowledged right now. Once that need becomes visible, authority weakens. A calm communicator does not negotiate for attention. They assume it, not arrogantly, naturally. They speak as if the room already belongs to them, not because they dominate it, but because they are at ease within it. This ease is deeply persuasive, and it tells others that the speaker is not threatened by disagreement, not afraid of misunderstanding, not dependent on immediate validation. Their words are not chasing acceptance. They are offering clarity. And clarity always feels heavier than noise. Many people believe they must project intensity to be taken seriously. They must emphasize every point. They must prove conviction through force. But intensity without control feels unstable. True authority is quiet, not because it lacks energy, but because it contains it. Contained energy carries weight. This is why leaders who speak slowly often dominate rooms filled with louder voices, why their pauses command more attention than others' sentences. Their calm creates contrast, and contrast draws focus. When everyone is loud, quiet stands out. When everyone rushes, the stillness becomes magnetic. Loud voices blend together. Calm voices become landmarks. To change how you communicate, you must release the belief that being heard requires effort. Effort communicates struggle. Struggle communicates doubt. Instead, focus on regulation. Slow your breathing before you speak. Let your body settle. Allow words to come from a steady place. If the message feels urgent inside you, wait. Urgency fades when clarity arrives. When you speak from clarity, volume becomes irrelevant. Your words land because they are not competing with your own emotions. This chapter is not an invitation to speak less out of fear. It is an invitation to speak less out of confidence, not shrinking, not withdrawing, choosing precision over excess. The next chapters will explore silence as a strategic tool, calm as a signal of authority, and how fewer words create deeper impact. But it begins here, by understanding that loudness is not power. Stability is, and the moment you stop trying to sound powerful, you begin to become powerful. Chapter 2. Silence is not empty. It's strategic. Silence makes many people uncomfortable, not because nothing is happening, but because too much is happening inside them. When words stop, the mind looks for control. It searches for certainty. It feels exposed. This is why silence is so often interrupted, filled, explained away. Yet silence is never empty. It is a signal. In conversation, silence creates a psychological pause where attention reorganizes itself. It slows the tempo, it shifts the focus, it subtly transfers control. When you speak and then stop, you invite the other person to lean forward emotionally. You give your words time to land instead of pushing them forward. Most people rush to speak again because they mistake silence for loss. Loss of momentum, loss of authority, loss of connection. But silence does the opposite. It creates gravity. The human nervous system responds to pacing more than content. Fast exchanges feel reactive. Slow exchanges feel deliberate. Deliberate communication signals confidence. When you pause, you're telling the room that you are not afraid of waiting. You are not desperate for immediate feedback. You trust the space you create. That trust is contagious. People begin to mirror it. They slow down. They listen more carefully. They choose their responses with greater intention. This is why silence often feels uncomfortable to those who rely on words for control. Without constant speech, there is nowhere to hide. Silence exposes intention. It reveals whether your words are grounded or rushed, whether you are centered or unsettled. This exposure is precisely what makes silence powerful. In a negotiation, silence shifts leverage. In leadership, silence builds authority. In conflict, silence diffuses escalation, not because it avoids the issue, but because it reframes the emotional field around it. A pause after a statement signals completion. It tells the listener that the thought is whole. There is no need to add more. This wholeness gives your words weight. When you continue speaking past the point of clarity, you dilute your message. You turn a strong signal into background noise. Silence protects clarity. It allows the listener to process instead of react, to reflect instead of defend. This is why strategic silence often feels unsettling to others. It removes their usual cues. It forces them to engage more consciously. They cannot predict your next move. They cannot rush the conversation forward. And an unpredictability commands attention. There is a difference between awkward silence and intentional silence. Awkward silence is filled with anxiety. Intentional silence is filled with presence. The difference is internal. When you pause while remaining calm, the silence feels stable. It feels purposeful. It feels complete. When you pause while feeling uncertain, the silence feels fragile. The listener senses this immediately. This is why silence must be supported by inner regulation. You cannot fake it. Silence amplifies your internal state. Whatever you are carrying emotionally becomes more visible when you stop speaking. Calm silence communicates authority. Anxious silence communicates doubt. The skill is not learning when to stop talking. It is learning how to stay grounded when you do. In everyday conversations, silence can be used to reset dynamics. After making a point, pause. Let it breathe. Resist the urge to explain further. Resist the impulse to soften it. Allow the other person to respond from their own space. Often, they will reveal more than you expect. Silence invites honesty. It gives people room to fill the gap with their true thoughts rather than rehearsed responses. This is why skilled listeners speak less. They understand that information flows toward space. In leadership, silence sets tone. A leader who pauses before responding signals thoughtfulness. A leader who does not rush signals confidence. Teams take cues from pacing. If the leader is calm, the group stabilizes. If the leader is reactive, the group follows. Silence is a form of emotional leadership. It communicates boundaries without confrontation. and it establishes presence without dominance. You are not withdrawing, you are anchoring. Many people fear that silence will be interpreted as weakness, that it will be mistaken for uncertainty. In reality, uncertainty shows itself through over-explaining, through constant clarification, through the inability to let words stand on their own. Silence, when intentional, signals that your words do not need reinforcement. They are sufficient. To practice strategic silence, begin with small pauses. 1 second longer than feels natural. Then 2. Notice the urge to speak again. Notice the tension it creates. Do not fight it. Observe it. As you grow comfortable with silence, you will notice a shift. Conversations slow down. People interrupt less. Your words begin to feel heavier, not because you are controlling others, but because you are controlling yourself. Silence is not absence, it is structure. It shapes conversations the way pauses shape music. Without it, everything becomes noise. With it, meaning emerges. In the next chapter, you will see how calm itself becomes a signal, how emotional steadiness communicates authority before a single word is spoken. But remember this: silence is not something you insert into communication. It is something you allow. And when you allow it, your words stop chasing attention and begin to command it. Chapter 3. Calm is a signal of inner authority. Calm is not a personality trait. It is a signal. Before anyone evaluates what you say, they register how you feel. Not through logic, through tone, posture, pacing, and restraint. The nervous system listens first. Words come later. This is why calm carries authority. When someone remains composed under pressure, the brain of the listener receives a clear message. This person is not threatened. This person is not overwhelmed. This person is in control. Control creates safety, and safety creates trust. Human beings instinctively follow those who appear emotionally regulated, not because they are louder or more charismatic, but because their presence stabilizes the environment. Calm is contagious. In tense situations, people look for an anchor. Someone whose emotional state does not rise and fall with every stimulus. The calm individual becomes that anchor without trying. They do not need to assert dominance. They do not need to prove intelligence. Their steadiness speaks first. This is why calm often feels intimidating to those who rely on emotional intensity. It cannot be rushed. It cannot be baited. It does not react. Reactivity signals loss of control. Calm signals choice. Every time you pause instead of responding immediately, you demonstrate that you are choosing your response rather than being driven by it. This distinction is subtle but powerful. People trust those who choose. Authority is not about force. It is about predictability under pressure. When someone knows you will not overreact, they relax. When they relax, they listen. This is how calm reshapes power dynamics. A composed response in a heated moment instantly elevates your position, not because you won, but because you did not lose yourself. Most conflicts escalate not because of disagreement, but because of emotional contagion. One person reacts, the other mirrors it. Soon, the conversation is no longer about the issue. Calm interrupts this loop. It creates a pause in the emotional chain reaction. It slows the escalation before it becomes irreversible. This is why calm is often mistaken for dominance. It feels like strength because it contains energy instead of releasing it. Contained energy feels heavier. When you speak from calm, your words do not carry desperation. They carry intention. You're not trying to convince. You are presenting. You are not defending. You are clarifying. And this difference is felt immediately. A calm voice does not rush toward agreement. It allows disagreement to exist without threat. And this tolerance signals confidence. Confidence does not need validation. It does not collapse when challenged. It remains steady. People sense this steadiness and respond to it. Often unconsciously, they speak more carefully, they listen more closely, they adjust their tone to match yours. This is emotional leadership. Calm does not demand alignment. It invites it. Many people believe authority comes from certainty, from having answers, from projecting decisiveness. But certainty without calm feels rigid. It feels brittle. True authority comes from flexibility grounded in control. A calm communicator can change their mind without losing face. They can admit uncertainty without losing respect. Because their authority does not depend on being right, it depends on being stable. Stability is rare, and rarity commands attention. To cultivate calm, you must shift your focus inward before speaking outward. Notice your internal pace. Notice your breathing. Notice the tension in your body. These signals shape your communication long before words form. If your body is tense, your words will feel sharp. If your breath is shallow, your tone will feel rushed. Regulation is the foundation of authority. Slow breathing slows perception. Slowed perception increases clarity. Clarity sharpens expression. This is why calm communicators often say less. They wait until their internal state matches the message they want to deliver. They do not speak to discharge emotion. They speak to convey meaning. This discipline separates presence from noise. Over time, calm becomes an identity rather than a technique. People come to expect it from you. They know you will not escalate unnecessarily. They know you will not speak impulsively. They know your words will be considered. Expectation itself becomes authority. When calm becomes predictable, trust deepens. You are no longer reacting to situations. You are shaping them. In the next chapter, you will learn why clarity matters more than emotion, why speaking from feeling often weakens communication, and how restraint turns insight into influence. But remember this: calm is not something you perform, it is something you embody. And once embodied, it speaks louder than any voice ever could. Chapter 4. Speak from clarity, not emotion. Emotion moves quickly, it rises fast, it demands expression, it pushes words forward before they are fully formed. Clarity moves slowly, it waits, it organizes thought, it chooses what matters and releases what does not. Most communication problems are not caused by bad intentions. They are caused by speaking too early. When emotion leads, words become messy. They carry fragments of thought rather than complete ideas. The listener feels this immediately. They may not be able to explain it, but they sense confusion instead of direction. Emotion is powerful, but it is not precise. Clarity is precise, but it requires restraint. When you speak from emotion, you're often speaking to relieve yourself, to release tension, to discharge feeling. When you speak from clarity, so you are speaking to serve the message. This distinction changes everything. Emotional speech feels urgent. Clear speech feels deliberate. Urgency pressures the listener. Deliberation invites them in. This is why emotionally driven communication often triggers defensiveness. The listener feels pushed before they feel understood. Clarity removes that pressure. It allows your words to arrive without demand. Think about moments when you said something you later wished you had framed differently. The intention was right. The delivery was not. Emotion blurred the edges. You spoke while still inside the feeling rather than after understanding it. Clarity comes after emotion has been processed, not while it is active. This is a critical skill. Strong communicators do not suppress emotion. They regulate it. They allow emotion to inform insight, but they do not let it dictate timing. Timing is everything. A clear message delivered too early sounds reactive. The same message delivered later sounds grounded. The difference is not the words, it is the state behind them. When you feel the urge to speak immediately, pause, not to avoid the conversation, but to refine it. Ask yourself one question before speaking. What is the one thing that actually needs to be said? Not everything you feel, not everything you think, just the core. Emotion tends to expand language. It adds qualifiers, explanations, justifications. Clarity compresses language. It removes excess. It leaves only what carries meaning. This compression creates weight. Short sentences feel heavier when they are chosen carefully. Long explanations feel lighter when they are driven by emotion. The listener does not count words. They feel coherence. Emotion scatters focus. Clarity directs it. This is why calm communicators often sound confident even when expressing uncertainty. They are not hiding emotion. They have simply separated feeling from expression. They feel first, they speak later. This sequence builds trust. People trust those who appear internally organized. Disorganization, even emotional sincerity, feels unstable. Clarity signals order, and order feels safe. In difficult conversations, emotion often tries to protect you. It reacts to perceived threat. But protection through reaction usually creates more resistance. Clarity creates boundaries without confrontation. You can be firm without being forceful, direct without being sharp. This balance is only possible when emotion has settled enough for clarity to emerge. Notice how leaders handle pressure. The strongest ones do not speak faster. They speak more slowly. They allow silence to separate feeling from response. That separation is where authority lives. When you remove emotional noise, your message becomes simpler, not weaker, stronger. Because simplicity signals confidence. Unsure people tend to over-explain. Clear people tend to stop sooner. They trust their words to stand. Emotion often seeks reassurance. Clarity does not. This is why emotional communication often circles the same point repeatedly. It is not trying to inform, it is trying to be felt. Clear communication moves forward. It states, it pauses, it allows a response. To practice speaking from clarity, begin by slowing down internally and notice the first impulse to speak. Do not follow it immediately. Let it pass. Then notice the second impulse. It is usually calmer, more focused. That is where clarity lives. You do not need to eliminate emotion. You need to let it settle. Clarity emerges when emotion stops asking to be expressed. In conversations that matter, this restraint becomes visible. People feel the difference. They sense that you are not speaking to unload. You are speaking to communicate. This creates respect. Respect is not earned through intensity, it is earned through precision. Precision requires clarity. Clarity requires patience. When you speak from clarity, your words feel intentional. They do not wander, they do not defend themselves. They arrive complete. This completeness allows silence to follow naturally. You do not feel the need to fill space. The message has landed. In the next chapter, you will learn how fewer words can carry a heavier meaning, how restraint amplifies impact, and why say less often communicate more. But remember this: emotion may fuel insight, but clarity delivers it. And the moment you learn to wait for clarity, your communication begins to change shape. It becomes steadier, sharper, more powerful. Not because you feel less, but because you choose more carefully what deserves to be said. Clarity also changes how responsibility is perceived in conversation. When you speak from emotion, responsibility feels shared. You look for agreement. You wait for reassurance. When you speak from clarity, responsibility is owned. You do not ask the listener to validate what you say. You present it as complete. This ownership shifts the dynamic. People sense when someone is standing behind their words rather than hiding inside them. Emotional speech often carries an invisible request. Understand me. Agree with me. See it my way. Clarity removes the request. It states what is true for you without needing confirmation. This is why clarity feels mature. Maturity does not seek to be understood immediately. It trusts that understanding will arrive in time. Another reason clarity strengthens communication is that it reduces internal conflict. When emotion drives speech, part of you is still processing while another part is talking. This split creates inconsistency. Your words move faster than your insight. Clarity requires integration. Feeling, thinking, and intention align before expression. This alignment gives your words coherence. Coherent speech feels trustworthy. Even when people disagree, they respect coherence. They may challenge the idea, but they do not question your stability. Clarity also improves how you handle pushback. When someone challenges an emotionally driven statement, the reaction is often defensive. You feel misunderstood. You escalate explanation. When someone challenges a clear statement, you remain steady. You are not attached to convincing. You are attached to accuracy. This allows conversation to stay productive rather than personal. Clarity separates identity from opinion. You do not become the argument. You remain the observer of it. This distance preserves calm. Calm preserves authority. Speaking from clarity also refines timing, so you begin to sense when a conversation is not ready for certain truths. Not because they are wrong, but because the emotional environment cannot receive them yet. Clarity waits. It does not force insight into unreceptive space. This patience often increases impact. When the moment arrives, fewer words are needed, because clarity has already shaped the ground. Emotion often wants immediacy. Clarity values effectiveness. Effectiveness requires patience. This patience is felt. It signals confidence in the long term rather than urgency in the moment. Clarity does not chase outcomes. It positions truth and allows response. That positioning is powerful, because once clarity is spoken, it remains. Even if the listener resists initially, the message stays present. Emotion fades quickly. Clarity endures. Chapter 5. Fewer words, heavier meaning. Every word you speak has weight, not because of how it sounds, but because of what it replaces. When words are excessive, meaning thins out. When words are chosen, meaning concentrates. This is the difference between talking and communicating. Most people believe that saying more increases clarity. In reality, saying more often hides the point. It buries the core beneath explanation. It softens conviction with unnecessary detail. Fewer words force precision. They require you to know what you actually mean before you allow yourself to speak. This requirement alone separates strong communicators from reactive ones. When you speak too much, you give the listener too many paths. They do not know which one to follow. When you speak less, you guide attention exactly where it needs to go. The focus creates impact. This is why short statements often feel powerful. They leave no room for distraction. They arrive clean. They stand on their own. People feel this immediately. A sentence that has been reduced to its essence feels heavier. It does not rush. It does not defend itself. It simply exists. Excess words usually come from uncertainty. The speaker is not fully settled, so they keep adding, clarifying, justifying, reframing. Each addition weakens the original signal. Clarity does not need reinforcement. It needs space. When you say something important, stop. Let it land. Resist the urge to soften it with explanation. Resist the impulse to check how it was received. Silence after a clear statement increases its weight. It tells the listener that nothing more is required. Many people fear that if they stop too soon, as they will be misunderstood. But misunderstanding often comes from overload, not simplicity. The brain processes fewer ideas more deeply. When you compress your message, you make it easier to remember, easier to feel, easier to act on. This is why memorable lines are rarely long. They do not explain themselves, they imply. Implication invites engagement. The listener fills in the meaning internally. That internal participation creates ownership. Ownership creates influence. When you over-explain, you remove that opportunity. You think of them. Fewer words respect the listener's intelligence. Respect strengthens connection. Strong communicators trust that what needs to be understood will be understood. They do not chase comprehension. They state, they pause. If clarification is needed, it will be requested. As this posture communicates confidence. Confidence is felt long before it is analyzed. Another reason fewer words carry more weight is that they reveal discipline. Discipline suggests control. Control suggests authority. People instinctively trust those who appear controlled, not rigid, contained. Containment keeps energy focused. When energy is focused, it feels powerful. Notice how leaders speak in high-pressure moments. They do not give speeches. They give directions. Clear, short, decisive. They remove everything that does not serve the outcome. This is not coldness. It is a responsibility. In personal conversations, the same principle applies. When you say less, people listen more carefully. They know each word matters. When you say everything, nothing stands out. To practice this, now begin by editing yourself mentally before speaking. Ask one question. What is the point I want to leave behind? Not what you want to express, not what you feel compelled to say, what you want the listener to remember. If a sentence does not serve that point, let it go. This requires restraint. Restraint is uncomfortable at first. It feels like holding back. But what you are really doing is refining. Over time, restraint becomes natural. Your speech becomes sharper without becoming harsh. Fewer words also reduce emotional leakage. When you talk too much, emotion seeps through cracks. When you speak concisely, emotion stays contained. Containment preserves authority. This does not mean being silent or distant. It means being intentional. You're not removing warmth. You are removing noise. Noise distracts. Clarity connects. When your words are fewer, your tone becomes more noticeable. Your pacing becomes more intentional. Your pauses become meaningful. Everything works together. Communication becomes cohesive. This cohesion is what people experience as presence. Presence is not about charisma. It is about alignment. Your thoughts, emotions, and words move in the same direction. There is no internal conflict spilling into language. This alignment makes even simple statements feel strong. In the next chapter, you will learn how tone shapes emotional response, how your voice guides perception before content is processed. But remember this: every word costs attention. Spend it wisely. Say less. Let meaning grow heavier. And allow silence to do part of the work for you. Speaking less also changes how people assign value to your words. Value is not created by frequency. It is created by scarcity. When words are always available, they are easily ignored. When words are selective, they are anticipated. This anticipation increases attention before you even speak. People prepare themselves to listen. Fewer words also protect your message from misinterpretation. The more you say, the more angles your words create. Each angle is an opportunity for confusion. Concise speech reduces angles. It directs understanding rather than scattering it. This direction gives your communication a sense of purpose. Purpose is felt as confidence. When you speak concisely, your words feel intentional rather than reactive. They do not wander. They arrive where they are meant to. Another effect of fewer words is emotional containment. When you talk excessively, emotion leaks between sentences. Tone shifts, pacing changes. These inconsistencies weaken impact. Shorter statements keep emotional energy contained. Containment creates gravity. Gravity draws attention without effort. People lean in when something feels dense with meaning. Fewer words also increase accountability. When you say less, each word carries more responsibility. You cannot hide behind explanation. You cannot retreat into clarification. This accountability sharpens expression. It forces you to speak only when you are ready to stand by what you say. Standing by your words builds credibility. Credibility builds influence. Influence does not require repetition. It requires precision. Precision becomes visible when you stop talking early. Ending a statement at the right moment feels decisive. Decisiveness feels strong. Strong does not mean aggressive. It means settled. Settled communication feels complete. It does not invite correction unless correction is necessary. This completeness allows silence to follow naturally. Silence reinforces weight. Together, fewer words and silence create authority without effort. They tell the listener that nothing more is required. Over time, this pattern reshapes how others engage with you. They interrupt less. They ask more thoughtful questions. They respond with greater care. Your communication raises the level of the conversation, not because you dominate it, but because you simplify it. Simplicity is rare, and rarity commands respect. Chapter 6. Control your tone. Before you control the room. Your tone speaks before your words do. Before meaning is understood, emotion is felt. The human brain is wired to detect tone instantly. It registers safety or threat long before logic enters the conversation. This is why tone often overrides content. You can say the right words with the wrong tone and still lose influence. Tone carries your internal state outward. It reveals whether you are calm or tense, confident or uncertain, grounded or reactive. And once that signal is sent, it cannot be taken back. Most people focus on what they say. Very few pay attention to how they sound while saying it. Yet tone determines how your message is received. A rushed tone feels anxious. A sharp tone feels defensive. A flat tone feels disengaged. A steady tone feels controlled. And control is what people respond to. When your tone is calm, listeners relax. When listeners relax, they become receptive. Receptivity is the foundation of influence. Tone is shaped by pace, by breathing, by posture. When you speak too quickly, your tone rises. When you breathe shallowly, tension creeps in. When your body is tight, your voice reflects it. This is why regulating your body regulates your communication. Slow breathing lowers vocal tension. Lower tension deepens tone. A deeper tone feels more stable. Stability communicates authority. You do not need to force your voice lower. You need to slow yourself down. The voice follows the nervous system. When the nervous system settles, tone follows naturally. Many people unconsciously raise their tone when they feel challenged. They speak faster. They emphasize harder. This escalation signals vulnerability. Even when the message is correct, the tone undermines it. A calm tone does the opposite. It signals that you are not threatened by disagreement, that you are not rushing to defend your position. This non-reactivity changes the dynamic immediately. Others adjust to you. They lower their voice. They slow their pace. They listen. Tone sets the emotional floor of the conversation. If your tone is grounded, the conversation stabilizes. If your tone is reactive, instability spreads. This is emotional leadership in action. Leadership is not about commanding others. It is about regulating the environment. Tone is one of the fastest ways to do that. In moments of tension, your tone matters more than your words. A calm "no" carries more weight than an emotional "yes." Boundaries are felt through tone. You can be firm without being harsh, clear without being aggressive. This balance creates respect. Respect grows when people feel both safe and guided. tone creates that combination. To practice tonal control, begin with awareness. Notice how your voice changes under pressure. Notice when it speeds up. Notice when it tightens. These shifts happen before you realize it. The moment you notice them, pause. Take one slow breath. Let the exhale lengthen. Then speak. This small adjustment can transform the entire interaction. Another way to refine tone is to remove unnecessary emphasis. You do not need to stress every word. Overemphasis feels like effort. Effort feels like struggle. Let keywords stand naturally. Allow pauses to do some of the work. Silence gives tone space to resonate. When you rush through sentences, and tone becomes compressed. When you pause, tone deepens. Depth feels powerful. People respond to depth even if they cannot explain why. This is why experienced communicators sound calm even in difficult conversations. They trust pacing. They do not fill silence with sound. They let tone carry the message forward. Tone also communicates respect. A calm tone signals that you are taking the other person seriously, that you are not trying to overpower them. This respect is often mirrored. People soften when they feel respected. Softening opens the door to understanding. Understanding opens the door to influence. Tone creates this sequence quietly, without effort, without force. Over time, tonal control becomes intuitive. You stop thinking about your voice and start feeling the conversation. Your presence steadies the exchange. This steadiness becomes associated with you. People come to expect calm from your voice. They trust that conversations with you will not escalate unnecessarily. Expectation itself becomes authority. In the next chapter, you will learn how pausing amplifies impact. How silence after speech can command more attention than words. But remember this: before you control the room, control your tone. Because the room listens to how you sound long before it decides whether to listen to what you say. Tone also reveals how you relate to power. When you feel powerless, your tone tries to compensate. It tightens, it sharpens, it pushes. This compensation is subtle, but it is felt. A strained tone suggests that something is at stake emotionally, that you need the outcome to go a certain way. Need leaks through sound, and when need is heard, authority weakens. A grounded tone carries no urgency. It does not rush agreement. It does not chase resolution. It communicates that you are steady regardless of outcome. This steadiness changes how others position themselves around you. They stop testing, they stop pushing, they listen. Tone also determines how boundaries are received. The same words can feel respectful or confrontational depending on tone. A calm boundary feels firm, an emotional boundary feels negotiable. People push against what feels unstable. They respect what feels settled. This is why controlling tone is essential when saying no. And a soft but steady refusal is harder to argue with than an intense explanation. It leaves no emotional opening. Tone closes loops. It signals completion. When your tone is calm, your words sound final even when they are brief. Finality is a form of power. Many people mistake loudness for confidence because they confuse volume with certainty. But certainty is not loud. Certainty is quiet. It does not need emphasis. It does not need reinforcement. It simply states. Tone carries this certainty more clearly than content ever could. Another layer of tonal control is consistency. People trust what they can predict emotionally. If your tone fluctuates wildly depending on mood or circumstance, others stay guarded. They do not know what version of you they will encounter. Consistency builds safety. Safety builds trust. Trust builds influence. This is why leaders who remain even-toned under stress are followed more easily. They reduce emotional volatility in the group. Their tone becomes a reference point. When tension rises, others unconsciously look to them to recalibrate. Tone becomes an anchor. Anchors do not move with the current, they hold. Holding steady is often more influential than directing. Tone also affects how you hear yourself. When you speak calmly, your own thoughts slow down. You hear what you are saying more clearly. This internal feedback loop improves clarity in real time. You catch unnecessary words before they leave your mouth. You notice when a sentence is complete. Tone guides restraint. When you speak with controlled tone, you are less likely to escalate internally. You do not feed your own emotions with intensity, and this self-regulation preserves energy. Energy that is preserved can be directed. Directed energy feels purposeful. Purpose is felt. In long conversations, tone determines endurance. Those who speak with tension tire quickly. Those who speak with calm can sustain presence. Sustained presence creates credibility. People trust those who do not burn out mid-conversation. They feel held. To integrate tonal control, practice lowering internal urgency rather than adjusting your voice directly. Before speaking, ask yourself one question. Is there a rush? If there is, wait. Waiting allows tone to settle. When tone settles, words follow naturally. You do not need to sound confident. You need to be regulated. Regulation produces confidence as a byproduct. Over time, others will associate your voice with stability. They will feel calmer when you speak, more focused, more receptive. This association becomes part of your identity, and identity communicates before intention. By mastering tone, you are not controlling others. You are controlling the emotional field you bring into every interaction. That control is subtle, quiet, and deeply powerful. Chapter 7. The Power of Pausing. Pausing is uncomfortable for most people, not because it is ineffective, but because it removes the illusion of control. When you pause, you stop filling space with sound. You stop guiding the moment with words, and in that gap, something important happens. Attention sharpens. A pause breaks momentum. It interrupts automatic responses. It forces awareness back into the room. This is why pausing feels powerful. It slows time. When you speak continuously, conversations run on instinct. People respond reflexively. They follow familiar patterns. A pause disrupts that pattern. It invites presence. The human mind is trained to complete sequences. When a sentence ends and nothing follows, the brain leans forward. It waits. Waiting creates focus. And this is why silence after a clear statement often feels heavier than the statement itself. The pause gives the word space to expand. Without a pause, meaning rushes past. Pausing is not hesitation. Hesitation feels uncertain. Pausing feels deliberate. The difference is internal. When you pause from calm, the silence feels stable. It does not apologize for itself. It does not seek permission. It simply exists. This existence communicates confidence. People instinctively respect those who are comfortable with silence. Comfort signals control. Control signals authority. A pause also transfers effort. When you keep talking, you carry the entire weight of the conversation. When you pause, the listener carries part of it. They think, they process, they respond more thoughtfully. This shared effort creates engagement, because engagement creates influence. Pausing also prevents overcommunication. It stops you from explaining past the point of clarity. Many strong statements are weakened by what follows them. An extra sentence, a softening phrase, an unnecessary justification. Pausing protects your message. It tells the listener that nothing more is required. In difficult conversations, pausing is especially effective. After setting a boundary, pause. After stating a decision, pause. After expressing disagreement, pause. Do not rush to fill the space with reassurance. Let the pause do the work. The other person will often reveal more than you expect. They may explain themselves further. They may adjust their tone. They may reconsider their position. Pausing invites honesty. It removes the pressure to perform. This is why skilled negotiators use silence strategically. They understand that words move positions, but silence reveals them. In everyday communication, pausing signals maturity. It shows that you are not afraid of discomfort, that you do not need constant affirmation. This self-sufficiency is attractive. People trust those who do not rush. They sense that such individuals are acting from choice, not impulse. Pausing also deepens tone. When you stop speaking, your voice does not rise. It settles. The next sentence arrives with more weight. This rhythm creates authority without effort. Authority grows in the spaces between words. Most people fear that pausing will make them seem uncertain. In reality, uncertainty shows itself through overcorrection, through quick clarifications, through nervous laughter, through excessive explanation. A clean pause feels intentional. It feels complete. To practice pausing, start small. After finishing a sentence, count one breath before speaking again. Notice the urge to continue. Let it pass. Over time, extend the pause. You will begin to notice subtle shifts. People interrupt you less. They listen more closely. Your words feel heavier. Not because you changed what you say, but because you changed when you stop. Pausing also regulates your own emotions. It creates a buffer between stimulus and response, a moment where choice becomes possible. That moment is where self-mastery lives. Self-mastery changes communication. You are no longer reacting to the room. The room is responding to you. This is not dominance, it is alignment. When your internal pace slows, the external pace follows. And in the final chapter, you will learn how to train this presence daily, how to make calm, clarity, and restraint part of your identity rather than techniques. But remember this: words create direction, pauses create power. And those who master the space between sentences often shape conversations without saying much at all. Pausing also reveals something important about you. It shows whether you trust yourself. When you rush to speak again, you reveal doubt. Doubt that your words were enough. Doubt that silence can hold meaning on its own. A pause communicates the opposite. It says you trust what you said, you trust how it landed, and you are not afraid of how it will be received. This trust is felt immediately. People become more careful with their responses. They choose words instead of reacting emotionally. Pausing changes not only how others hear you, but how do they hear themselves. Silence gives people room to notice their own thoughts, often for the first time in a conversation. This self-awareness shifts the dynamic. Instead of debating, they begin reflecting. Instead of defending, they begin clarifying. This is where real communication happens. Pausing also protects you from saying what you cannot take back. Words spoken in momentum often exceed intention. They carry emotion further than meaning. A pause creates a boundary. It separates impulse from expression. Inside that boundary, you regain choice. Choice is the essence of control. When you pause, you are no longer reacting to the conversation. You are shaping it. This shaping does not require force. It requires patience, and patience signals maturity. Mature communicators are not rushed by discomfort. They are not unsettled by silence. They allow moments to unfold. This allowance creates depth. Depth is what makes conversations feel meaningful rather than transactional. Pausing also reduces the need for correction. When you speak without pausing, you often need to repair what you just said. You soften, you reframe, you explain. These repairs weaken your original message. A pause prevents overextension. It keeps your communication clean. Clean communication feels intentional. Intention commands respect. Another benefit of pausing is that it exposes power imbalances. Those who rely on dominance often fill the silence quickly. They fear losing control. Those who are comfortable pausing signal that control is already internal. Internal control is more convincing than external dominance. In group settings, pausing has a magnifying effect. When everyone is speaking quickly, the person who pauses becomes a focal point. Attention naturally shifts toward stillness. Stillness contrasts move with ament. Contrast draws the eye and the ear. This is why pauses feel authoritative without sounding assertive. They do not compete, they stand apart. Pausing also allows you to listen more accurately. When you stop preparing your next sentence, you hear what is actually being said, not just the words, but the tone behind them. This deeper listening improves your responses. They become shorter, more precise, more relevant. Relevance strengthens influence. People respond better when they feel understood rather than impressed. Pausing creates the space necessary for understanding. And to integrate pausing into your identity, practice it beyond conversations. Pause before replying to messages. Pause before making decisions. Pause before reacting internally. This habit trains your nervous system to associate pause with safety. Over time, silence stops feeling threatening. It becomes familiar, and familiarity removes fear. When fear leaves, control remains. Pausing is not a trick, it is a posture of confidence, of patience, of self-respect. Those who master pausing do not rush life. They move deliberately. And in communication, deliberateness is power. Chapter 8. Train presence until it becomes identity. Presence is not something you switch on, it is something you become. Most people treat communication as a performance. They adjust how they speak depending on the situation. They try to remember techniques. They correct themselves mid-sentence. This effort is visible, and effort weakens authority. True presence is effortless because it is consistent. It does not change when pressure appears. It does not collapse when stakes rise. It remains. This is why presence must be trained, not applied. What you practice daily becomes how you show up naturally, not just in conversations, but in silence, in posture, in pacing. Presence begins before you speak. It begins in how you enter a room, how you sit, how you listen. People read these signals constantly. They decide how seriously to take you long before you open your mouth. Training presence means training your internal state to stay steady, regardless of external noise. This stability does not come from confidence alone. It comes from familiarity. You become calm under pressure by repeatedly choosing calm in low-pressure moments. Small conversations matter. Every interaction is a rehearsal. The way you respond to minor disagreements, interruptions, or misunderstandings sets the pattern for bigger moments. If you rush into small situations, you will rush to the important ones. If you practice restraint daily, restraint becomes automatic. Presence is built through repetition, not a dramatic change. Subtle discipline. Begin by noticing your default pace. Do you speak quickly when excited? Do you over-explain when questioned? Do you fill silence automatically? These habits are not flaws. They are patterns. Patterns can be retrained. Choose one interaction each day to practice presence intentionally, not by saying something impressive, but by regulating yourself. Slow your breathing. Lower your pace. Pause before responding. Let your body lead your words. This practice rewires how your nervous system associates communication. Over time, calm stops feeling like an effort. It feels normal. Clarity follows. You begin to know what you want to say sooner. You stop sorting thoughts out loud. This internal organization makes your speech more concise without trying. Others notice. They may not comment on it, but their behavior shifts. They interrupt less, they listen longer, they respond with more care. Your presence changes the rhythm of interaction. This rhythm becomes associated with you. People come to expect calm, thoughtful engagement when they speak with you. Expectation is powerful. It creates authority without assertion. Another part of training presence is learning when not to speak. Not every thought needs expression. Not every reaction deserves airtime. Restraint strengthens identity. When people know you do not speak casually, they treat your words as deliberate. Deliberation builds trust. Trust builds influence. Presence is not about withdrawing from conversation. It is about entering it fully. Listening becomes active rather than passive. Silence becomes engaged rather than empty. You are not waiting for your turn to speak. You are absorbing. This absorption sharpens intuition. You begin to sense when to speak, when to pause, and when silence communicates more than language ever could. This intuition cannot be taught directly. It emerges from consistent practice. The goal is not perfection. The goal is alignment. When your internal state, your tone, your pacing and your words move together, communication feels natural. There is no friction, no second guessing, no need to correct yourself afterward. This alignment is what people experience as presence. Presence is not loud. It does not demand attention. It attracts it. As you move through life, you will encounter pressure, conflict, and uncertainty. Presence does not remove these challenges. It changes how you meet them. You do not rush. You do not overreact. You do not disappear. You remain. And remaining steady in unstable moments is one of the rarest forms of power. By now, you have seen that powerful communication is not about speaking better. It is about being better regulated. Silence, calm, clarity, restraint, pause. These are not techniques. They are signals. Signals that tell others who you are before you ever explain yourself. Train these signals daily. Not for performance, not for control, but for consistency. Because when presence becomes your identity, you no longer need to manage how you are perceived. Your communication speaks for itself, and without trying to be heard, you are. Presence also changes how you handle moments of uncertainty. When you do not know the answer, when you are challenged unexpectedly, when the situation is unclear. Most people rush to cover uncertainty with words. They guess, they speculate, they speak just to avoid appearing unsure. This habit weakens trust. Presence allows you to sit inside uncertainty without discomfort. You can pause. You can acknowledge what is unknown. You can wait. Waiting communicates maturity. It shows that your sense of worth does not depend on having immediate answers. People respect this more than certainty built on noise. In conversations where emotions are high, presence becomes even more visible. You do not mirror agitation. You do not escalate urgency. You slow the exchange. This slowing has a calming effect on others, even if they resist it at first. Eventually, emotional intensity loses momentum. Calm always outlasts reactivity. This is why presence is a long-term advantage. It does not seek to win moments. It shapes patterns. Over time, people begin to associate you with clarity, with steadiness, with thoughtful responses. They come to you when situations are complex, when decisions carry weight, when conversations require care, not because you speak the most, but because you speak when it matters. Presence also refines your sense of timing. You begin to recognize that the right words spoken at the wrong moment lose power, and the right moment, even with few words, can change everything. This sensitivity to timing cannot be forced. It develops as your internal pace slows. You notice more. You interrupt less. Listening becomes your primary mode. Not passive listening, but active awareness. You hear what is said. You sense what is unsaid. This awareness guides your responses. You no longer feel the need to fill space to prove engagement. Your engagement is felt without explanation. As presence deepens, your communication becomes economical. You conserve energy. You stop investing words where they will not be received. This selectivity strengthens your influence. People value what is not freely given. Your words become something others anticipate rather than ignore. This anticipation is not manipulation. It is a natural result of consistency. When someone knows that you speak with intention, they pay attention when you speak. Presence also protects you. It keeps you from being pulled into unnecessary arguments, from reacting to provocation, from explaining yourself to those who are not listening. You become more discerning. Discernment preserves dignity. Not every conversation deserves your energy. Not every challenge requires a response. Presence helps you choose. This choice is a form of power, not the power to dominate, but the power to remain aligned with yourself. Over time, this alignment becomes visible in all areas of life, in how you move, in how you listen, in how you decide. Communication stops being an effort. It becomes an expression of who you are. And when who you are is calm, clear, and grounded, your words naturally carry weight, without force, without volume, without excess. This is the quiet strength behind powerful communication. Not something you perform, something you live. Powerful communication is not about saying the right thing at the right time. It is about becoming the kind of person whose words naturally carry weight. Throughout this audiobook, you have not been trained to speak louder, faster, not or more persuasively. You have been trained to slow down, to regulate yourself, to let clarity, calm, and restraint shape how you show up. This is a different kind of strength, one that does not rely on reaction, one that does not compete for attention, one that does not fear silence. When you speak less, you create space. When you pause, you create focus. When you remain calm, you create trust. These are not techniques you turn on when needed. They are signals you send every time you enter a conversation. Signals that tell others whether you are grounded or rushed, centered or reactive, in control or seeking it. As you move forward, remember this. You do not need to win conversations. You do not need to explain yourself endlessly. You do not need to fill every silence to be seen. Presence does the work for you. When you regulate yourself first, communication becomes simple. Your tone settles. Your words sharpen. Your pauses gain meaning. People begin to listen differently, not because you demand it, but because your presence makes listening feel natural. This is the quiet shift that changes how you are perceived. Not overnight, not dramatically, but consistently. And consistency is what builds authority. Over the next few days, practice restraint deliberately. Say less than you normally would. Pause longer than feels comfortable. Let your words stand without reinforcement. Notice what changes. Notice how conversations slow down. How do interruptions decrease? How your words begin to feel heavier. You are not withdrawing. You are refining. You are learning to trust silence, to trust clarity, to trust yourself. Because the strongest communicators are not the most expressive ones. They are the most regulated ones. They do not rush meaning. They allow it. And when meaning is allowed to arrive on its own, it stays. Carry this with you. Not as a rule, but as a posture. Speak when there is something worth saying. Pause when silence can do more. Remain calm when others escalate. Say less. Be heard more. And let your presence speak long after the conversation ends.